Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, Bill Reimer, your reluctant prophet. I assume that many of you, in encountering the woke left, often wonder why they react the way they do. The chief function of this channel isn't proselytizing. Of course, I don't count that out. If anyone doesn't hope in Christ, I encourage you to ask for a revelation, because God will grant you one. But the chief function of this channel is to equip the brethren with knowledge and information to help them in their journey of sharing the gospel and building the church up into a dwelling place of Christ in the Spirit. So in that vein, today I'm going to speak on encountering the left and what you can expect. The predictability of the totalizing enterprise, or how I know what the left thinks before they think it. My wife uses the phrase asshat to describe folks who one would assume ought to know better, but still say foolish and illogical things anyway. Often my wife, whose mother tongue is not English, invents such phrases since not being restricted by the usual usage of the lingua franca, she can think outside of the box when inventing new ways of describing fools. Spoiler alert. The left, however, is driven by linguistic orthodoxy, which is why asshat is the most fitting epithet, since I hear things from them that would lead me to conclude that their ass is indeed located where their brains ought to be. The left has a fascination with their anuses. After all, why else would the federal government of Canada have had tampon dispensers installed in men's bathrooms? Which other orifice other than one's rectum darn near killed him, would a man be able to insert a menstrual product? The left is obviously stuck in what Freud referred to as the anal phase of childhood development. The anal stage is a second stage in Sigmund Freud's theory of psychosexual development, taking place approximately between the ages of 18 months and 3 years. According to Freud, the anus is the primary erogenous zone, and pleasure is derived from controlling bladder and bowel movements. The major conflict issue during this stage is toilet training. A fixation at this stage can result in a personality that is too rigid or one that is too disordered. According to Freud's theory, personality is developed through a series of stages focused on erogenous areas throughout childhood. A healthy personality in adulthood is dependent upon all of these childhood stages being resolved successfully. If issues are not resolved in a stage, then fixation will occur, resulting in an unhealthy personality. Yes, unhealthy personalities and a weird fixation with anal sex with the mental and emotional maturity of a 3-year-old. No wonder LGBTQ+ is so vital to their entire zeitgeist, with so much of the sexuality it promotes at taxpayers' expense focused on anal intercourse. Now, what do 3-year-olds want? Mommy and daddy to coddle and care for them, where their every act of successfully wiping their bottom receives praise, as though keeping shit out of your underwear is an achievement worthy of approbation and praise. Herein lies the left, the reason believes in the totalizing enterprise. Since they have never matured, since they have not assumed the mental and emotional accountability of adulthood, they seek to create a system that will provide them with everything they need. Such a system requires that others assume responsibility for them, including their financial welfare, education, health care, and even what news will be made so innocuous that it won't upset these little darlings. Of course, those who are orchestrating the demise of classical liberalism, the free market, capitalism, and a rule of law which holds wrongdoers accountable know this full well, which is why the totalizing enterprise is always guised in catchphrases such as, "We are all in this together," even as the globalist class of besserwissers orchestrates the downfall of democracy, which includes the single greatest transference of wealth since 2020 in all of human history, and continue to do so under other guises that have nothing to do with what they claim to be doing, such as preventing climate change. And here I provide, you'll see this in the blog, RBC's housing affordability and the increasing cost of ownership, just as an example of what has happened under Trudeau's administration. Alexander Solzhenitsyn famously said, "Men have forgotten God. That's why all this happened," since he believed that the rejection of God played a pivotal role in the rise of totalitarianism and the moral decay of society. So, to whom does the left cater, whether this be either the deceived leftists or their deceivers? They cater to the zero-sum lunacy of their own totalizing enterprise. They believe that they belong to an unelected globalist elite who will dictate to the little people how they must live while themselves living in unentitled privilege. Only the ideologically possessed could possibly believe such things. The new left are the bastard children of what happens when communism fornicates with fascism to create an ideology where the elite will control everything, hence the phrase, the totalizing enterprise. This enterprise seeks to do four things: keep the little people in a perpetual state of infantile dependency to the powers that be, attack the nuclear family while perverting human sexuality, persecute the Christian faith by making it a hate crime to openly denounce immorality and preach the gospel, and confiscate and restrict private property through any devious means that they can invent, including excessive bureaucracy with a resulting centralized state-controlled economy, high taxation, and don't forget their favorite technique of printing money out of thin air while wasting resources on things like installing tampon dispensers in men's bathrooms, while defunding the military at home as they fund dubious conflicts and wars abroad. Now pull that tampon out of your arse. Don't be an asshat and grow up. The nanny state is not your salvation. It spells your ruin. Moreover, it is an idolatrous attempt to recreate the Tower of Babel, namely an all-encompassing system that will reach unto heaven, so that this totalized, idolatrous enterprise will replace our need for God and fellowship with his people. Like the cult that it is, it even has its own secret language, which indicates its cult-like belief system. Dr. James Lindsay views woke culture as a belief system akin to a Gnostic religion. Although he refrains from labeling it as such, he suggests that this belief system, if considered a religion, would be a very detrimental one. According to him, it is based on the premise that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society, and that it was created by white people for their own benefit. Lindsay also argues that Karl Marx, in creating Marxism, was not merely outlining a political or social theory, but was in fact constructing a theology. He sees this religious fanaticism for Marxist and socialist ideology as prevalent today in woke culture, which he describes as intrinsically totalitarian. Furthermore, Lindsay presents the idea of negating the real to replace it with a hyper-real simulation in which totalitarianism can be accomplished. This suggests that the woke culture operates within a false image of reality, which enables the establishment of the totalitarian system. In summary, Lindsay's perspective on the woke culture is that the belief system, with its religious undertones rooted in Marx theology, that operates with a simulated reality to establish a totalitarian regime. It's important to note that these interpretations are Lindsay's personal views and are not universally agreed upon, unless you're talking to Bill Reimer, the reluctant prophet. Now to sum up, one thing that always amazed me, particularly since my experience in Norway, which I now see happening in Canada over a much shorter period of time. I know before I even hear the woke speak what they will say, since their entire repertoire is formulaic and their responses are hyper-emotional and reactionary. Yet when I attempt to engage them in discussion while using ethics, epistemology, and ontology, by citing factual sources, they respond negatively and in a dismissive or mocking manner, without ever citing a single source of evidence that would justify their position. I was criticized back in June when I stated this to a dear friend who falsely assumed that I meant they all had the same personality or temperament. But that's not the case at all, nor is it what I meant. What makes the left's responses so remarkable is that despite all their unique personality traits, they all respond identically when confronted with reality and facts. I can only assume that this is what must have happened in Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union when the group identity came to overpower a person's individuality to the point where their personality became subjugated to the Borg-like collective. I can assure you, if you have encountered this phenomenon, the experience is truly off-putting. And if you have, perhaps you will find my explanation useful in understanding the psychological damage that these idea pathogens are wreaking on society and the terrible emotional mind game of this weapon of manipulation and guilt. These are things to consider and pray about. As we head into this final week of Advent, God bless you. Keep praying, keep looking up, keep listening to the Reluctant Prophet. Make sure you're subscribed, ring that bell, leave a remark, a criticism. Make sure you provide your sources. God bless you.